The rain fell hard on the alien city, making the streets shine under the dim blue lights. The air was cold, and the night was quiet except for the sound of water dripping from the tall metal buildings. Most people walked quickly, heads down, not looking at each other. In this place, no one wanted trouble. And no one cared about strangers, but Marcus, a human traveler, noticed something different that night. He was passing through a wide street when he saw her in the middle of the road. Kneeling in the rain was an alien girl. Her shoulders shook. As she sobbed, her long silver hair was wet and clung to her thin face. She wore a torn coat, and her hands were pressed to her eyes as if trying to hide her tears. Everyone passed by without stopping. Some glanced at her but quickly looked away, as if helping her might bring danger. But Marcus slowed his steps. His boots splashed in the puddles as he walked closer. He didn't know why, but something in him refused to ignore her. He stopped a few feet away. His voice was gentle but firm. "What happened?" he asked. The girl froze. Her sobs became quiet, and she slowly lowered her hands. Her large, bright eyes stared at him in shock. It was as if she had never expected anyone to ask. Her lips trembled. But before she could speak, Marcus noticed movement at the far end of the street. Two tall alien enforcers were walking quickly toward them. Their armor shone under the rain, and they carried long rifles. They scanned the crowd with glowing visors, searching for someone. The girl's breath quickened. Her hands gripped the ground. "Please, don't tell them you saw me," she whispered. Her voice was shaking. Marcus looked at her, then at the enforcers. He didn't understand the situation, but her fear was real. The enforcers were now less than 20 steps away, scanning each face. Marcus felt the tension in the air grow heavier. "Stand up," he whispered. Holding out his hand to her, she hesitated, then grabbed his hand. Her fingers were cold. He pulled her to her feet. "Come with me," he said quickly. They moved to the side of the street, blending into the flow of people. The enforcers passed nearby, and Marcus kept his head down. He could feel the girl trembling beside him. The moment the enforcers turned in the other direction, Marcus guided her into a narrow side alley. The alley was dark, the walls high and dripping with water. The smell of rust and damp air surrounded them. The girl leaned against the wall, breathing fast. Marcus waited for her to speak, but she kept looking toward the street, listening for the sound of the enforcers. Finally, she whispered, "They're looking for me." Her voice was so soft he almost didn't hear it. "Why?" he asked. She shook her head. "It's not safe to say." Marcus felt a strange mix of curiosity and caution. This was not his problem, and yet he couldn't just leave her here. Something about the way she looked, broken, desperate, made it impossible to walk away. Suddenly, a mechanical hum filled the air. Marcus looked up. A drone was hovering above the alley entrance. Its lens glowed red, and a cold voice came from it. "Subject Lyra. Surrender yourself immediately." The girl Lyra stiffened. "We have to go," she said. Her fear turned into sudden urgency. Marcus glanced at the drone, then back at her. "Where?" he asked. "Anywhere but here," she said, grabbing his arm without thinking. Marcus followed as she ran deeper into the alley. The ground was slippery, and water splashed under their feet. The drone moved closer, a red targeting light flashing. On the wall beside them, a warning shot hit a metal pipe, sending sparks into the air. They turned sharply and entered a narrow passage between two old storage buildings. The sound of the city faded, replaced by the distant echo of sirens. Marcus's heart was pounding. He had no idea why he was running with her, but stopping now felt like danger. Lyra finally slowed down when they reached a dead-end courtyard. She was breathing hard, rain dripping from her hair. "You shouldn't have helped me," she said, looking at him with a strange mix of gratitude and worry. "It's going to get you in trouble." Marcus gave a small shrug. "Maybe," he said. But leaving you there didn't feel right. For a moment, they stood in silence, the rain pattering around them. Somewhere in the distance, the drone's voice echoed again, searching, calling her name. Marcus knew one thing whatever had just started, it was far from over. The rain was still falling when they left the courtyard. Marcus followed Lyra through the maze of narrow back streets. She moved fast, not looking back, as if she already knew these paths well. The glow of the drone's red light no longer followed them, but the sound of distant sirens was still there. Like a warning that the hunt was not over, the city's air was heavy with smoke and the smell of wet metal. Neon signs flickered weakly above closed shops. The few people they passed avoided their eyes. Keeping to themselves, Marcus noticed how Lyra's steps became unsteady, her energy fading. She had been running too long. They stopped under a broken awning where the rain didn't reach. Her breathing was rough, and her hands shook as she leaned against the wall. "We can't stop for long," she said quietly. Marcus could see she was scared, but also determined. "You want to tell me why they're after you?" he asked. She hesitated, looking at the ground. "It's not simple," she whispered. Before Marcus could push for more answers, a low rumble came from behind them. A black patrol skimmer glided down the empty street, its bright searchlights sweeping across the wet ground. Lyra's eyes widened. "Move," she said sharply. They slipped into a shadowy gap between two buildings, pressing themselves against the damp wall as the skimmer passed. The lights flashed over the space where they had been standing only seconds ago. When it was gone, Marcus felt his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know how much longer they could keep dodging like this. Lyra suddenly grabbed his arm, pulling him toward a metal staircase that led down to a service tunnel. The air grew colder as they descended, their footsteps echoing off the narrow walls. The tunnel was dimly lit, with only a few weak lights buzzing overhead. Water dripped from pipes along the ceiling. Marcus glanced around, noticing graffiti in a language he didn't understand. The place smelled of rust and old oil. "Where are we going?" he asked. "Somewhere safer," she answered, though her voice didn't sound convinced. They walked for several minutes. The only sounds were the hum of machinery somewhere far away and the occasional creak of old metal. Lyra kept glancing over her shoulder. Marcus could tell she was listening for something he couldn't hear. Finally, they reached a large, rusted door. She placed her hand on a small scanner beside it, and the lock clicked open. Inside was a forgotten storage room, filled with old crates and broken equipment. Lyra closed the door and leaned her back against it, her shoulders trembling slightly. Marcus looked around, finding an old chair and pushing it toward her. "Sit," he said. She hesitated, then sank into it. He crouched down to her level. "Tell me what's going on." For a moment, she didn't speak. The sound of the rain outside was faint now, hidden by the thick walls. Finally, she looked at him, her eyes red from crying. "They want me because I ran away from them," she said. Marcus frowned. "Ran away from who?" She swallowed hard. "From my family?" He blinked, unsure why that would bring soldiers and drones after her. "Your family sent those enforcers." She nodded. "My family. They are part of the High Council," she explained. "They control the city, the people, everything." She looked away. "They control me too. Or they tried to." Marcus felt the weight of her words. It wasn't just trouble with the lit, was something deeper, something political, and you don't want to go back, he said. She shook her head quickly. "If I go back, I will never be free again." Before he could ask more, a sudden metallic clank echoed down the tunnel outside the door. Lyra stiffened. Marcus silently reached for a broken metal pipe lying on the floor. The sound grew louder, slow and deliberate. Whoever was out there wasn't in a hurry. They knew their prey had nowhere to run. The door rattled, as if someone was testing it. Marcus stepped closer to Lyra, his grip tightening on the pipe. Then came a voice, deep and cold, speaking in the alien tongue. Marcus didn't understand the words, but he didn't need Toothatone carried the threat clearly. Lyra's eyes filled with fear. "They've found us," she whispered. Marcus looked at the crates stacked near the back wall. "Is there another way out?" She nodded toward a small ventilation hatch half hidden behind some machinery. It was barely wide enough for them to crawl through. But right now, it was their only chance. They moved quickly, trying not to make too much noise. The door shook. Harder now, metal groaning under the pressure. Marcus climbed into the hatch first, pulling Lyra in after him. The space was tight, the air stale, but at least it was dark the moment they were inside. The storage room door finally gave way with a loud crash. Through the narrow grate, Marcus saw the shadows of armored figures entering the room. Their footsteps were heavy, their voices low but urgent. He and Lyra didn't move, barely even breathing. The soldiers searched the room, knocking over crates and kicking aside debris. Finally, one of them stopped near the hatch. Marcus felt his muscles tense. But then another voice called from outside the room, pulling the soldiers' attention away. Within moments, the figures left, their steps fading. Marcus waited until he was sure they were gone before crawling forward through the vent. When they emerged into another dark alley, the cold rain hit them again. Lyra looked up at the night sky, breathing deeply. "We can't keep running like this," Marcus said. She nodded. "Then we need to stop running." Her voice was quiet but firm, and Marcus knew that whatever she meant by that, it was going to pull him even deeper into her fight. The rain slowed to a mist, but the streets were still slick and empty. Marcus and Lyra moved quickly, their footsteps soft against the wet ground. The air was heavy, carrying the faint hum of distant traffic from the higher levels of the city. Above them, the tall buildings leaned inward, their windows glowing like cold eyes. They didn't speak for a while. Marcus wanted answers, but he knew asking now might slow her down. Lyra's eyes darted around as if she expected danger to appear from any shadow. When they finally stopped in a narrow corner lit by a single, flickering light, she took a deep breath. "What's in that crystal you keep holding?" Marcus asked. His voice was calm, but his curiosity had been building since the moment he saw it through her coat earlier. Lyra's fingers tightened around the small object in her hand. It was no bigger than a walnut, yet it gave off a faint glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. "It's not just a crystal," she said quietly. "It's a key." Marcus frowned. "A key to what?" She glanced around before answering, "To break the High Council's control." Her voice was firm now, but there was a tremble beneath it. She explained that the High Council kept control over her people through something called the Central Core, a massive network hidden deep beneath the city. Every citizen's identity, movement, and even thoughts were tracked through it. The crystal she carried was the only device that could unlock the core's protective shield. Without it, no one could even get close. Marcus listened carefully, the weight of what she was saying slowly sinking in. "And they're chasing you because they can't let you use it," he said. She nodded. "If they lose the core, they lose everything." The sound of metal scraping against stone made them both freeze. Marcus glanced down the alley, and in the dim mist, a shape was moving low to the ground, mechanical and fast. Lyra grabbed his arm. "Tracker drone," she whispered. Its sharp red eye flashed once. Locking onto them, they ran, the drone's wheels screeching as it accelerated behind them. Marcus's boots splashed through puddles, water spraying in every direction. Lyra kept the crystal close to her chest. The alley split into two paths. Marcus didn't hesitate. He took the darker one, hoping to lose the machine, but the drone was fast. It rolled up the wall for a moment, bypassing debris, and landed ahead of them with a metallic thud, its claw-like arms extended, ready to grab. Marcus looked around desperately. His eyes caught a heavy trash bin half filled with rainwater. With a sharp kick, He sent it rolling straight into the drone. The impact knocked it sideways, sparks flashing from its sensors. "Go," Marcus said. Pushing Lyra forward, they slipped. Past the machine, its systems struggling to recover. The sound of its worry faded as they turned another corner. They reached a quieter area now, where the buildings were older and crumbling. Lyra leaned against a wall, catching her breath. "You didn't have to do that," she said. Marcus gave her a tired smile. "I think I did." She stared at him. For a moment, then slowly said, "Most people wouldn't." Marcus shrugged. "I'm not most people." The faintest hint of a smile touched her lips. But it vanished quickly as she remembered their situation. Lyra told him about a group called the Undercity Network, rebels who lived far below the streets. They had been trying to bring down the High Council for years. But without the crystal, they couldn't breach the core's shield. Her plan had been to reach them before she was caught. Marcus thought about it. The Undercity was known, even among humans, as dangerous. A place where law didn't exist, and trust was a rare currency. "If we go there, we might not come back," he said. She met his gaze. "If we don't, no one will ever be free." He didn't answer right away, but the way she looked at him made something in his chest tighten. Maybe it was the way her eyes carried both fear and hope at the same time. Finally, he nodded. "All right, let's find your rebels." They began walking again, heading toward an old transit station that had been closed for decades. The streets grew quieter with each step, the air colder in the distance. Marcus thought he heard the faint sound of machinery grinding beneath the city. Lyra moved with purpose now, as if the closer they got, the more certain she became. But certainty didn't mean safety. As they crossed a rusted bridge over a drainage canal, a voice echoed from the shadows ahead. "Going somewhere. Little runaway." Figures stepped into view, 5 of them, each wearing the dark armor of High Council enforcers. Their leader's helmet glinted under the dim light, and in his hand was a long, black rifle. Marcus felt Lyra tense beside him. He glanced at her. Then, back at the soldiers, his grip tightened around the piece of broken pipe he had kept from the warehouse. The leader took a step closer. "Give me the crystal, us, and maybe I'll let your human friend live," he said. Marcus smiled faintly, though his heart was pounding. "You're going to have to take it." The leader's visor tilted slightly, and then he raised his weapon. The night air filled with tension, heavy and unbroken, somewhere far below. The sound of the city's pulse seemed to grow louder. The bridge groaned under the weight of the rain and the tension between the two sides. Marcus stood slightly in front of Lyra, his body angled to shield her from the enforcers. The leader's visor reflected the faint glow of the city far behind. Them his rifle steady and cold. The other 4 soldiers spread out, forming a wall that blocked any escape forward. The only way out was back the way they came. But Marcus knew more enforcers might be waiting. The leader took another slow step closer, the sound of his boots against the metal bridge echoing in the still night. "What?" Lyra's breath was quick and shallow, her hand gripping the crystal tightly. Under her coat, Marcus lowered his voice so only she could hear. "When I move, run to the left side of the bridge and climb down." She looked at him in disbelief. "You'll never make it," she whispered. Marcus's lips curled into the faintest smile. "I've done worse." The leader spoke again. "Last chance, girl. Give me the crystal." Marcus didn't wait. In a single motion, he threw the metal pipe at the leader's visor. It hit with a loud crack, making him stagger. At the same moment, Marcus charged forward. Slamming his shoulder into the nearest soldier, the man stumbled, nearly falling over the railing. Lyra didn't hesitate. She ran toward the left side of the bridge, climbing over the slick railing as Marcus had told her. One of the soldiers turned to fire at her, but Marcus grabbed his arm and wrenched it aside. The shot went wide, burning a hole in the wet metal floor. The leader recovered, roaring in anger. "Kill the human," he ordered. Marcus ducked another swing. His boots slipping slightly on the wet surface, he grabbed a dropped rifle and swung it like a club, knocking one soldier to the ground. But there were too many, and they were closing in fast. Below, Lyra was climbing down the side of the bridge's support beams, the rain making them slippery and dangerous. She could hear the shouts above and the heavy clanging of boots as the soldiers tried to corner Marcus. Her chest tightened. She couldn't leave him, not after everything he had done. One of the soldiers caught Marcus from behind. Locking an arm around his throat, Marcus slammed his elbow into the man's ribs, breaking free, but the leader was already raising his rifle again. At that moment, Lyra did the only thing she could think of. She pulled the crystal from her coat and held it high. The faint blue glow lit up her face. The leader froze, his visor locking on the object in her hand. "Stop!" he barked. The soldiers hesitated, unsure whether to grab Marcus or focus on her. Lyra used that moment. "You want it?" she called, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. "Then you'll have to come down here and take it." She dropped from the last beam into the drainage canal below. Splashing into the shallow water, the soldiers moved toward the railing. But Marcus lunged at the leader, knocking him off balance. The leader's rifle clattered to the ground and slid toward the edge. Marcus grabbed it, firing a quick burst into the metal floor between them to force them back. "Go!" Marcus shouted down to Lyra. She hesitated only for a second before turning and running through the dark canal. The walls on either side were high and slick, water rushing around her boots. Marcus backed toward the railing, firing another shot before swinging himself over and climbing down after her. Ah! The sound of the soldiers shouting above echoed into the night. When his boots finally hit the canal floor, Marcus felt the cold water soak into his clothes instantly. Lyra was waiting just a few steps ahead. "This way," she said, pointing to a dark tunnel opening beneath the bridge. They ran together into the blackness, the glow of the crystal lighting their path. The tunnel was narrow and dripping with moisture, the air heavy and stale. Their footsteps splashed through the shallow water as they moved deeper. The sounds of pursuit above slowly faded, replaced by the distant hum of underground machinery. Finally, when they were far enough inside, they stopped, breathing hard. Marcus leaned against the wall, the rifle still in his hands. "You almost got yourself caught just now," he said. Lyra's eyes met his, "and you almost got yourself killed." For a moment, they both laughed softly, the sound strange in the dark, but the moment didn't last. A faint metallic click echoed from somewhere deeper in the tunnel. Marcus instantly raised the rifle. Lyra held the crystal closer. The sound came again, this time followed by the low growl of gears turning from the shadows ahead. Several small red lights appeared, one by one. They weren't drones. These shapes were larger, hunched, and moving on jointed legs. Lyra's face went pale. "Tunnel sentries," she whispered. "If they catch us here, we're done." Marcus tightened his grip on the rifle, his voice low but steady. "Then we don't let them catch us." He took a step forward into the glow of the crystal, the red lights ahead multiplying. The chase wasn't over. It had just moved underground. The red lights moved closer, their glow reflecting on the wet walls of the tunnel. Marcus could now see the shapes clearly, tall machines with long, jointed legs and sharp claw-like feet stepped out of the darkness. Their heads were nothing but armored shells with a single glowing eye in the center. They moved slowly, but with a steady, deadly rhythm. Lyra pulled Marcus's toward a side opening, but the first sentry suddenly sped up, water splashing around its metal legs. Marcus raised the rifle and fired. The shot hit the metal head, sending sparks into the air, but the machine kept coming. Its armor was too thick for a clean hit. "This way," Lyra hissed. Dragging him through a narrow gap between two rusted pipes, the tunnel beyond twisted. Sharply, forcing them to run bent over, the sound of the sentries echoed behind them, steady and cold. The air grew warmer as they moved deeper. Steam hissed from vents along the wall, coating their faces in damp heat. Marcus could hear the faint hum of a generator somewhere ahead. Lyra slowed near a heavy steel door. She knocked 3 times in a pattern. Paused, then knocked twice more. A slot in the door slid open, revealing a pair of alien eyes. The voice behind it was rough. "Password." Lyra leaned closer. Speaking in a low tone Marcus couldn't understand. The door clicked open with a loud metallic groan. Inside was a small chamber lit by hanging lamps. The walls were covered in maps and diagrams of the city. Around a table sat 4 figures. There, faces partly hidden by scarves and goggles. The tallest of them stood looking directly at Lyra. "You made it," he said, "and you brought." A human Marcus could feel the suspicion in their eyes. Lyra stepped forward, holding out the crystal. "We don't have much time. The High Council is hunting us." The tall man took the crystal carefully, his gloved fingers trembling slightly. "With this, we can finally reach the core," he said, his voice filled with awe. Marcus looked around the room, noticing the way the others whispered to each other. The atmosphere was tense, not only from fear of the council, but also from something unspoken. One of the rebels, a short alien with pale skin, stepped closer to Lyra. "You shouldn't have come here," he said. "You've led them to us." Lyra shook her head. "We lost them in the tunnels." But Marcus noticed the pale one's eyes flick toward the door, as if expecting it to open at any moment. Something about his movements made Marcus uneasy. The tall man placed the crystal on the table. "We'll prepare the breach team," he said. "In 2 hours, we move on the core." Lyra nodded, relief softening her expression. Marcus, however, stayed near the wall, his grip on the rifle tight. He had been in enough bad situations to know when the air felt wrong. They were given a small corner to rest. Lyra sat down, her back against the wall. Marcus stayed standing. Scanning the room, the pale rebel kept glancing toward them, and every time he caught Marcus looking, he turned away quickly. An hour later, Marcus heard the faintest sound, metal scraping on metal. He turned his head just in time to see the pale rebel slipping out through a side door. Marcus followed silently, keeping to the shadows. The narrow corridor beyond was dim and smelled of oil. At the far end, the rebel was speaking into a small communicator, his voice urgent. "They're here," the rebel whispered. "Yes. The girl has the crystal. The human is armed but won't be a problem. Send the squad now." Marcus's jaw tightened. He stepped forward quietly, pressing the barrel of the rifle to the back of the rebel's neck. "Drop it," Marcus said coldly. The rebel froze, his hands shaking. "You don't understand," he started, but Marcus cut him off. "I understand enough." He pushed the rebel back toward the main room. When they returned, Lyra looked up in confusion. "What's going on?" Marcus threw the communicator onto the table. The tall man picked it up, his face darkening. The room went silent. The pale rebel stammered. "I had 2. They promised me freedom if I..." But his words were cut short by the tall man's sharp gesture outside. The distant sound of boots hitting metal echoed through the tunnels. The High Council's forces were coming, and fast. Lyra grabbed the crystal from the table. "We can't fight them here," she said. Marcus nodded. "Then we move." The tall man led them through a hidden passage at the back of the room. It sloped downward, the air growing colder with each step. The sound of rushing water grew louder, and soon they were running beside a massive underground canal. The plan was clearage, the old maintenance shaft that led directly to the core's outer defenses before the council caught them. But as they turned the final corner, Marcus skidded to a stop. The tunnel ahead was already blocked, silhouettes of armored soldiers standing in the mist. Their visors glowed red, and the hum of charged weapons filled the air. The tall man swore under his breath. Lyra's grip tightened on the crystal. Marcus stepped forward, his voice low. "We make a hole, and we keep moving." The soldiers began advancing, their boots splashing through the water. The glow from the crystal lit the tunnel walls, casting long shadows over the approaching enemy. The fight for the core had just begun, and there was no turning back. The soldiers moved through the mist like shadows given life, water rippling around their boots. Marcus raised the rifle and fired first, the shot cracking through the tunnel. One of the armored figures fell back, but the rest kept coming, their weapons glowing hot in the dim light. Lyra stayed close to the tall rebel, clutching the crystal as if it were part of her own body. The air filled with the hiss of energy fire. Each blast lit the tunnel walls in brief flashes. Marcus darted forward, firing again, then ducking behind a thick pipe that sprayed steam from a broken valve. The steam clouded the air, making it harder for the soldiers to aim. "Go now," Marcus shouted. The rebels pushed forward, slipping through the steam. Their boots splashed through the water as they moved deeper into the tunnel. Marcus stayed behind just long enough to fire 2 more bursts, driving the soldiers back a few steps before turning to follow. The sound of pursuit never stopped. The soldiers were fast and disciplined, always keeping their formation tight. The tunnel sloped downward until the floor was almost completely submerged. The water was freezing, seeping into their clothes and slowing their steps. Lyra's breath came in sharp gasps, but she didn't stop. They reached a rusted gate that blocked the way ahead. The tall rebel slammed a code into the panel, but the gate didn't open. "It's locked from the other side," he growled. Marcus didn't waste time. He swung the rifle's stock in two, the panel sparks bursting out, then grabbed the metal bars and began to pull. The gate groaned, but held firm. Behind them, the soldiers were getting closer. Lyra stepped forward, holding the crystal to the gate. The faint blue glow pulsed brighter, and the rusted metal began to hum. The lock clicked, and the gate slid open with a slow, grinding sound. "Move," Marcus said, pushing her through first, on the other side. The tunnel widened into a massive chamber. The ceiling was lost in darkness, and in the center stood a huge metal platform connected to thick cables that ran into the walls. The tall rebel stopped. "This is the outer lift," he said. "It goes straight to the core security ring." They all climbed onto the platform, Marcus covering the rear. The tall rebel slammed a switch, and the lift groaned to life. Rising slowly, the sound of machinery echoed through the chamber. But so did something else, the faint splash of water. Marcus turned his head sharply from the shadows at the far end of the chamber. Another squad of soldiers appeared. Their boots hit the lift floor just as it began to rise. Marcus swung the rifle, firing point blank. One soldier fell, but another rushed him, slamming into his side. The two of them crashed against the railing, the drop below stretching into blackness. Marcus gritted his teeth, shoving the soldier back. Lyra ducked under a swinging rifle butt, kicking out the legs of another attacker. The tall rebel drew a short blade and fought silently but fiercely. Steel rang against armor, the sound mixing with the deep hum of the lift's engine. One soldier managed to grab Lyra's arm, twisting it painfully. Marcus caught the movement and lunged, smashing his rifle into the soldier's helmet. The man collapsed, the glow of his visor fading. The crystal was still safe in Lyra's grip, though her hands were shaking as the last soldier fell. Marcus leaned against the railing, breathing hard. Below them, the dark water glimmered faintly. Above, the first lights of the security ring came into view. Cold and sterile. "We're almost there," Lyra said, her voice a mix of hope and exhaustion. The lift clanged to a stop, and a blast of cold, filtered air hit them. The security ring was nothing like the tunnels. It was clean, silent, and bright. White metal walls curved in a perfect circle around them, and doors lined the passage at even intervals. They stepped off the lift, their footsteps echoing in the emptiness. Marcus didn't like it. It was too quiet, too perfect. The tall rebel seemed to sense it too. "Stay close," he said. They moved down the hallway, scanning every corner. The air smelled faintly of ozone. Halfway through the ring, the lights flickered. A low hum began to rise from the walls. Lyra's eyes widened. "They've locked down the sector, red warning." Lights blinked to life, and panels along the walls slid open, revealing automated turrets. The first turret whirred into position and fired. The shot barely missed Marcus, burning a hole in the wall beside him. The rebels scattered. Using the doorways for cover, Marcus fired back, but the turret's armor was thick. Lyra ducked beside him, her voice urgent. "The crystal can disable them, but I need to reach the control node." "Where is it?" he asked. She pointed down the corridor to a large, reinforced door at the far end. Marcus took a deep breath. "All right, stay behind me." He moved fast, drawing the turret's aim. Their shots sparking off the walls. The rebels provided cover. Fire, keeping the machines distracted. Lyra reached the control node and pressed the crystal into its central slot. The glow spread through the metal. And one by one, the turrets powered down. The red lights faded, leaving only the steady hum of the core beyond the door. Marcus joined her, placing a hand on the cold metal. "Once we open this, there's no going back." She looked at him, her voice steady. "I never wanted to go back." The tall rebel stepped forward, pressing the final release. The door began to open, a deep, mechanical sound filling the air. On the other side, the core awaited, its lights spilling out like the dawn of something new. The door slid open with a slow hiss, revealing the core chamber. It was massive, stretching higher than any building Marcus had ever seen. Thick cables ran like black veins into a central column of glowing energy. The air hummed with power, each pulse echoing through the floor beneath their feet. The light from the core was blinding, a mix of blue and white, bathing them in an otherworldly glow. Lyra stepped forward first, her eyes locked on the heart of the machine. For a moment, she looked small compared to the scale of it, but Marcus could see the steel in her gaze. This was her fight, her purpose. The tall rebel moved to one side. Scanning for any last traps, Marcus stayed close to Lyra, rifle ready. They were halfway across the platform when the sound of heavy boots came from behind. The High Council's elite guards stormed in, their black armor reflecting the core's light. At their front was the same leader from the bridge. His visor cracked from Marcus's earlier strike. His voice cut through the chamber. "Step away from the core, and I might spare you." Lyra didn't stop walking. Marcus stepped in front of her, his voice sharp. "You'll have to go through me." The leader raised his rifle, and the other guards followed. Energy blasts lit the air. Marcus returned fire, forcing them to spread out the tall rebel through a smoke charge, filling the chamber with a thick haze. Through the smoke, Marcus caught glimpses of movement. He ducked behind a console, firing bursts at shadows. The core's hum seemed louder, now faster, as if it could sense the chaos around it. Lyra reached the base of the column. She placed the crystal into a recessed slot. The machine's glow intensified instantly. The leader spotted her through the smoke and charged. Marcus saw him too late. He ran, slamming into the leader before he could fire. The two crashed to the floor, Marcus's rifle skidding away. The leader's strength was overwhelming, his armored fist striking with crushing force. Marcus gritted his teeth, blocking the blows. Lyra's hands flew over the controls. Her voice trembled but stayed steady as she activated the sequence. Symbols and codes flashed across the core's surface. The hum rose into a deep, resonating thrum that shook the chamber. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The leader finally threw Marcus aside, raising his weapon again, but before he could pull the trigger, Lyra turned, her hand gripping a lever on. "The console, this ends now," she said. She pulled it down, and the core erupted with a wave of energy that burst outward in every direction. The shock wave threw everyone off their feet. The guards' weapons shorted out. Their visors went dark. The leader struggled to stand, but the power flooding the room forced him to his knees. Marcus felt the energy pass through him like a warm wind, and for a moment, all sound vanished except the deep heartbeat of the core. When the light faded, the chamber was silent. The guards lay unconscious, their armor smoking. The tall rebel was on one knee, staring in awe at the core, which now pulsed softly. No longer under the council's control, Lyra stepped back from the console. Her face pale, but her eyes bright. "It's done," she whispered. Marcus walked to her side. "What happens now?" She looked at him with a faint, tired smile. "Now, my people are free." The tall rebel approached, his voice low. "The council's systems are collapsing. We'll take control before they can recover." His gaze moved to Marcus. "Without you, this wouldn't have been possible." Marcus shook his head. "Without her, none of this would matter." They left the chamber together. Stepping over the fallen guards, the tunnels back were strangely quiet. The city above would already be feeling the changes, the surveillance gone, the control broken. For the first time in years, people would wake without fear of the council watching every move. When they emerged from the underground, the rain had stopped. The air smelled fresher, as if even the city itself had been freed. Lyra stood in the open street, looking up at the faint glow of the core's tower in the distance. Marcus watched her, knowing this moment would stay with him forever. "You could leave now," she said. "Softly, go back to your own world. You've done more than enough." Marcus glanced at her, then shook his head. "I'm not leaving you here alone." Her expression softened, and for the first time since he met her, the tension in her shoulders eased. They began walking side by side, the wet streets glistening under the faint morning light. Somewhere far away, alarms still echoed, but they no longer sounded like a threat. The fight was over, but the future was just beginning, and whatever came next, Marcus knew they would face it together.